Today on the Stoney Ridge Farm Channel, we're gonna be putting squash up for the winter, and we're not freezing it and turning it into mush. We're gonna freeze dry it. It's gonna be awesome.
I ain't afraid of work. I ain't afraid of play. I ain't afraid to get the job done and do it my own damn way. I ain't afraid of life. Times like this. If you mess with my freedom, I'll tell you just what you can kiss. That's right.
Hey there, folks. This is Josh, Stoney Ridge Farmer. Welcome back to the bounty of the farm. It's so beautiful out here, guys. Today I'm out in the squash patch, and here's what you get. When you raise squash, I can't eat all this. So we end up sharing a lot of squash with the neighbors, and we end up throwing a lot of squash into the chicken coop and feeding the chickens. It's good for the chickens, but it's not so good for the guy that works so hard to grow this squash. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk a little bit about preserving, okay? So the ultimate prepper machine is in my garage right now, and it's called a Harvest Right freeze dryer. And what we're gonna be doing is taking this squash, cutting it up, and freeze drying it so it will be shelf stable for 25 years. That means no refrigeration, not canning it, not freezing it and turning it into mush. Now, if you know, when you freeze squash like this, it just turns to mush when you cook it. So today, we're gonna show you guys how a freeze dryer works and how we're gonna be saving our bounty of squash. Pretty much every day, I'm picking this much squash out of the garden, and I'll have a bounty of squash to cook all winter long now, and it'll taste delicious and retain its nutritive value, which is really important to me. I know I can go to the store and buy it, but it's not as good as what I grew at home. Let's have some fun. So I'm out here in my shop in my garage, and this is the Harvest Right freeze dryer. I'm gonna get you some close-ups of this thing, and I'll explain exactly how it works to you. Also got a pretty cool knife set we're gonna show you today. We got a day sponsor, so we'll show you that also. But first, let's walk around and we'll show you the Harvest Right freeze dryer. This is, I believe, the extra large. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 trays. So I think it's the large model. We'll open it up. I'll just get you in here a little closer and show you. This is a vacuum chamber, okay? This vacuum chamber is locked and latched closed, and this is a rubber gasket. You gotta make sure that rubber gasket is sealed up tight. That's the menu right there. It's pretty simple. All you gotta do is hit the start button. These are the trays that we're gonna be putting our food in. What we wanna do is ensure that our trays are completely full before we start this critter up, okay? The way this works, this is a vacuum chamber, okay? In other words, it freezes under vacuum, and this is a vacuum pump. This is the pump that comes with this machine. So we'll cut this squash up in little pieces about that big around and about that thick, and what it's gonna do is almost instantly freeze them, okay? It's gonna freeze them, and then it's gonna pull the vacuum and start sucking all of the moisture out of our squash up here. And again, making it shelf stable. Now this squash is a little bit large, but I think I'm gonna try it anyway. So that's how the Harvest Right freeze dryer works. It just plugs into a regular 110 outlet. On the back side right here, your vacuum pump is ran off of the power from the Harvest Right freeze dryer, and there's an on-off switch. Pretty simple stuff. Now when we get done, I'll show you what we put the squash in. So these are oxygen absorbers, guys, and these go inside these bags. They're called Mylar bags, 8x12 Mylar bags, and this is what we store our Harvest Right food in, okay? So that's a UV resistant bag right there, and again, this will make food shelf stable for up to 25 years. So the enemy of any preserved food like this is going to be moisture and oxygen, and that's why we put the oxygen absorbers in there, okay? It's really humid outside, and we want to bag these up when it's nice and cool and try to do it in low humidity. So we'll open this guy up. We're going to put our cutting board down right here, and we're going to go ahead and start cutting up squash and loading our trays. This is really fun, guys. Take this little guy, set him over to the side just like that. This will get warm, okay? This vacuum pump will get warm while this gets cold, so you gotta pay attention. You don't wanna do this in a really hot building, all right? This is our cutting board, and let me show you. These are Kamikito Knives. This is today's day sponsor, guys, and I am telling you, look at how gorgeous this knife set is. Really cool. This is something I'm going to be using in the butcher shop. We're building a butcher shop right now, so all this stuff will be moved into a commercial kitchen butcher shop right back here behind us. But today, for cutting up our squash, I think we're just going to use this critter right here. This is sharp, super, super sharp. Let me get something and I'll show you how sharp these are. I'll post a link to these, and I'm trying to get a discount code for you guys in case you want to pick yourself up a really good Japanese knife set. Here's how sharp the knife is. Wow, be careful if you decide to get one of these. All right, let's cut up some squash and have some fun. Okay, and what we're gonna do here is we're gonna cut our squash fairly thin, okay? And the goal here with cutting our squash fairly thin, I'm talking about maybe 1 inch thick, okay? And that's so that it all dries evenly. You wanna be consistent with your cuts. Some of these aren't so consistent. Man, that knife is nice. We'll fill all of these trays. That's 1 squash, and it's gonna basically fill half a tray, 1 small squash. So got some zucchini here, we're gonna try that too. What you guys need to know about freeze drying versus dehydrating from a dehydrator is that we're not cooking the food. We're actually freezing it in the current state that it is, and we're retaining more nutrient. And you know, when we grow a garden for ourselves, we're growing it because it's high in nutrients, okay? It's good quality. It's not that garbage that you buy in the grocery store. Food from the garden, from a homegrown garden, tastes so much better. So when we rehydrate these, they will have retained most of their nutritive value. Versus freezing them in the freezer and trying to cook them, they just turn to mush. Now that might be good for zucchini bread or squash bread, but it's not so good for eating squash just like it's fresh out of the garden. Not only can you put vegetables in here, you can put meat, you can put all sorts of stuff in here. It will keep. Before we load our trays in, we're gonna hit start, right there, cooling vacuum chamber. Okay, we'll close this guy down, and this thing will start cooling off. Once it gets cold, after about 15 minutes, we're gonna load our trays in. Tells me to load the food. Open her up, load my trays. Close it up, get a good seal right there. Hit continue. There it is. We'll see you in 24 to 48 hours. So it's the next day. Let me show you what the Harvest Right freeze dryer is doing. It's gone through several cycles. The cycle of freezing, then heating back up, and right now it's in the drying mode right here. I'll show you real quick. So it says drying. It tells you how long it's got, about 4 hours and 13 minutes left. You can see inside there, they just shrunk up a little bit. You see ice on the insides right here. So the vacuum pump is sucking all the moisture out of the food. The moisture is sticking to the wall on the inside, and at the end of this process, it will melt off that ice, which is all the water that was in the food, and it'll come out this little drain plug right here. It's why I have a bucket sitting right there. So we probably have another 5 hours or so. This has been going for about 24 hours now, and we're just about to load up on squash again and restart it. So this thing runs almost constantly when it comes to harvest season here on the Stoney Ridge. So that's what we've got. It's gonna look great. We're at hour number 30 now, and everything is freeze dried. So the machine tells you right here, it's time, process complete, open the drain. This is the drain right here, so we will open that. You'll hear it hiss. I'm gonna do it slowly. That opens up, and you'll see this rubber seal kind of back off a little bit. And then we can open it up and test it. We would hit the defrost button right here, but first we want to open her up and just take a quick check. We'll just pull one out. Oh, it's light as a feather. Keep drain open, continue. Now, this is what you get. This is light as a feather, like a cereal marshmallow almost. So, a healthy snack if you just want to munch it as a snack, or you can reconstitute it with water, and we'll show you guys in a future video how you can reconstitute it with water. Actually, I'm going to take a piece in right now. So when I get done, I'll put these into Mylar bags and I'll seal them. This kit comes with a sealer from Harvest right here. So we slap them in the Mylar bags, we put those little oxygen tabs in there, and then it's good for up to 25 years of shelf life. I'm actually gonna pull one of these guys out. We're gonna take it inside the house real quick, and I'll show you reconstituting it with water. That is the Harvest Right freeze dryer. This is the ultimate prepper machine, guys. I can keep my squash for 25 years. If you have something like this and you keep this running constantly during the summer, you will never run out of food. Expect some more content with the Harvest Right freeze dryer. I've got some shallots to do. We're gonna try out some meat. We're gonna try all sorts of stuff. To make it shelf stable, we don't have to refrigerate it. We just keep it in a cool, dry place, and this food is gonna be delicious. Just like I'd cook any squash, we'll go a medium heat. I'm gonna put a little bit of avocado oil on here. Just like so. Avocado oil has a higher burning or scorching temperature. So we'll let that heat up, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna reconstitute this in a plate. So I ran a little water in this plate, and we're just gonna lay it over in here. Floats, as you can tell. What this does, and what's important to know here, is that the freeze dryer preserves the food in the state that it was as soon as you put it in there. In other words, you don't lose the nutritive value of your food like you do if you cook it or if you dehydrate it with the dehydrator. The dehydrator will warm it up, and you don't take all of the moisture out. Moisture is the enemy. Oxygen is the enemy. That's what grows the bacteria that causes food to rot. We're eliminating the rot factor. So we've gone from this, which is basically powder. It just makes it into powder. Okay, if you want to make some squash or zucchini bread, this would be awesome too. So we're going from that to this within a minute and a half. A little salt, a little black pepper. That's how I cook squash. We'll brown it, flip it, and eat it. You'll notice I've got a bit of a cast iron problem here. I've got a little cast iron collection problem. Look, oh my goodness. Love my cast iron. Flip this guy over. Yep. Nice and brown. On the plate we go. What does it taste like? What's the consistency? That's what I'm concerned with. Just like squash. We want squash, we don't want squish, if you get my drift. Not quite as good as just fresh out of the garden. But guys, you can store it for 25 years. So that's awesome. Thank you all so much for joining me here on the Stoney Ridge Farm today. Please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you back here with me. We're gonna do a lot more fun stuff in the garden this year. Take care.
Well, come on down to the Stoney Ridge. Bring your wife and bring your kids. We're living life pure and sweet. That's the way it's supposed to be, Stoney Ridge. Woo!
Hey there, folks. This is Josh, Stoney Ridge. Yeah, the camera went dark. I'm gonna move the freeze dryer up, and when we open the door, it'll be right here. No, I'm not, because the Kubota's in the way.